Okay, here we go. It's not a Zoom without a minor technical difficulty along the way. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Whether you're joining us for the second time today or you're joining us for the first time, we are really excited to be sharing this Shifting Gears, 6 critical changes to impacting nonprofit success in 2021. Today, we're going to have, we have joining us Dr. Paula Anderson. She's the president and CEO of PACE Consulting, a behavioral health counseling and organizational consulting firm in the Washington, D.C. area. Paula has been in business helping candidates and clients for the last 20 years, providing individual, group, and couples therapy to children, adolescents, adults, and families. She's worked in the corporate and nonprofit settings, school-based mental health, private practice, and the federal government. She specializes and facilitates trainings and provides advice to companies on workplace well-being, team development, organizational culture, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Paula was featured in the MEA magazine in May and June of 2013 in the feature section as Women in Business Making a Difference. She was also recognized and was awarded as one of the 25 most influential women in business in October of 2013. In October of 2019, Paula was featured in the same magazine as CEO to Watch. I've actually personally known Paula for over 25 years. I believe that what she brings forth so uniquely is her ability to empathize and sympathize, and her compassion knows no bounds, which I believe is what makes her so successful in what she does. So I want to welcome Paula Anderson, and your turn, Paula.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. And no, I can't see faces either, and I'm such a people person, so this is hard, but I can see Mia, so that's good, and Maria and Catherine right now. Thank you, Mia and Doyle, so much for having me here this afternoon in your 6-part series on shifting gears. I'm so excited to be here. So I am going to, if you don't mind, share my screen. Can I do that now, Mia?
Sure.
Okay.
Hey, Paula, can you turn up your mic just a little bit?
Sure. Can you hear me better now?
Mm-hmm.
Much better? Okay, awesome. All right. All right, can everyone see? Okay, so I'm here to talk about shifting mindset, how to address the hidden effects of the pandemic on your workforce. And so, as Mia said, I am a licensed clinician in the state of Maryland, and I've been actually a clinician for over 20 years, and I use that. My son is 22, so I think I started maybe like a year after he was born, so 21 years being a mental health clinician. And just recently, I received my doctorate, and now I'm also an organizational psychologist. So what I do in my business definitely marries the two. I talk about the clinical practice and then also the organizational side as well. So I'll talk a little bit about. So Mia also already introduced our company. Again, we provide behavioral health counseling and consulting, and really look at anxiety, stress, trauma, and we work with a lot of employees, if you will. And so we know a lot of what's happening at the workplace in terms of workplace stress, which is why one of the focus areas for our company is workplace wellness. We also do team and leadership development and diversity, equity, inclusion work as well. So I just wanted to start out just saying that even before I go into what I'm hearing from my chair, and I'm literally in my counselor's chair right now, is that, and I'm not going to say every organization, but in my experience, many organizations think of mental health as an afterthought. It's not the first thing that comes to mind, like, like the bottom line, how much we're making, what's the profit, like those are the things that are top of mind, as they should be, because you want them, you want your company to be around. But your people, and I'll talk about that too, are your greatest asset. And if you're not considering the mental health of your people, I think that's actually not really good, because as you can see from this pandemic is that everyone's mental health has been affected in one way, shape, or form. And so I really ask the people that are here today to really think about and consider top of mind mental health and mental wellness at this point in terms of your workforce. And so what I'm hearing from the counselor's chair, and not just me, I'm talking about like the people that work for me and then my other colleagues as well. So this is just not, just Paula's perspective. This is a lot of people's perspective, is that people are emotionally and physically drained. People are at their wits' end in terms of pandemic. I know for myself, when I closed my door on March 16, 2020, I was like, oh, this will take 2 weeks. We'll be back in 2 weeks. And here I am alone in my office with no clients, because now I see them all through telehealth, and that has not happened. And so what I'm hearing, not just from, like I said, my own experience, but from others, that people are emotionally and physically drained. People cannot separate work and home at this point. If they're working from home, there's no separation. Like, so if you have kids on Zoom and then you're in a work call or the dog is barking, there's something always going on, and it's hard to separate that, where before you can close your office door, come home, and there was like a clear separation. That's not happening now. One of the biggest things I'm hearing is the inability to concentrate. People are having a hard time focusing and concentrating. And I can give you an example just for myself. Yesterday, I was in the middle of an email and then something popped up saying that the verdict was coming out, and I immediately lost concentration and I wasn't able to get back to my work probably until like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And so if that's happening to me, imagine what's happening to your workforce and your employees. I don't have the capacity. Again, just drained. Stress. I'm completely stressed. That's something that we're hearing a lot. People are just maxed out between all the responsibilities. And again, the things I talked about before, just not being able to separate work, home, family. Substance abuse, and I'll talk about that more, like people are turning to alcohol consumption or other drugs as well. We know about Zoom fatigue, and people just being naturally afraid, like afraid of getting COVID, afraid of their family members getting COVID, afraid of dying. Like that's a real, like sometimes I think, a lot of us, may not have just thought about death a lot, but I think now in the space that we're in, death comes on our minds more often than not. And so just being afraid of dying. And then I've heard as well, like if they make me go back, meaning my company, I'm looking for another job. And what I know, and what I know to be true, is that people have options. And so if they're home, before they may not have been able to like get on, Indeed and look for a job. Now, if they're home, no one is watching them. So if you're not providing a space or a safe space or an empathetic space for people to feel like they can be themselves or, take a mental health break, people are looking for other positions, and there's nothing that's stopping them. And so that's just something I want to mention. And something that actually mentioned to me recently is like last night, I got a really disturbing phone call of a person that I know really well. If you were to look at her, she very successful, extremely successful, well-to-do, doing well in life. I got a disturbing phone call that she committed suicide last night. And I, like even now as I'm talking about it, I'm in shock. And it's that person that you would look at and never think twice, like, really, her? And I don't know the circumstances, so I'm not going to speculate. But what I'm saying is that's the effect the pandemic is having on people. And I'm not saying that's what happened to her, but if you look at the research, there's a lot to saying that there's an increase in suicide rates. And so I'm saying all this to say that we need to take mental health, mental well-being very serious.
Yes, and Paula, I appreciate you sharing that because I think the reason why I felt like this topic was so important to discuss today is because, you know, just as a society, we don't put enough value in mental health well-being. And, you know, and I hear this, I'm not a counselor, but I'm a recruiter. And so I hear this all the time from my candidates. Much of the things that you shared are the things that I'm hearing from, you know, candidates that are feeling the same things. And the thing that I wanted to add at the end is really, you just don't know because you don't see them face to face. You just don't know what's going on with them behind the computer at home, whether they're looking for another job or they're just really stressed out. I've talked to actually one of my friends is on the call here, and she said, I've never worked so many hours before, you know, because you don't have to commute 2-3 hours in some cases to get to work. So
That's
people
right.
are putting in longer hours. There's kind of no limit because you're just going back and forth to your desk. So these, I think, are really important things that you're mentioning here.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's true. There's no end. People just kind of working and working and working until it's like they get tired, which is not healthy at all. So I just wanted just to share some other thoughts of people in the in this mental health space about like the effect of the pandemic on mental health. And if you can see on the screen here, it just says, throw the pandemic's mental health impact into the mix and work-related stress is likely to reach staggering levels in the coming months. Business leaders need to brace themselves for this aftershock and be prepared to meet a dramatically heightened need for support and services. And I shared this because, again, I think, as I mentioned before, mental health sometimes, for some people in some organizations, some leaders, it's an afterthought. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, you know, let's get them some resources, but it's not one of the first things that come to mind. And this quote just speaks to it, that, you know, that there's going to be an aftershock, and there's going to be, actually, there's not an after, there's a shock now, right? So, which means it's going to continue. And the second quote I have here on the screen, it says there by George Everly, he's at Johns Hopkins, and he says, there's no doubt that the coronavirus pandemic will be the most psychologically toxic disaster in anyone's lifetime. This pandemic is a disaster of uncertainty, and the greater the uncertainty surrounding a disaster, the greater the psychological casualties. And even as I read that, it's just like, oh boy, you know, like we need to brace ourselves. It's like I feel like we're literally at the tip of the iceberg. We're starting to see some things, but we haven't seen it all. And I think companies need to really take time to consider this aspect of their business, because it's gonna, I feel like it's gonna come in ways that we're just not prepared for if we don't think about it. And so being a researcher, I love sharing statistics. And here are some statistics, that I found on mental health in the workplace. And it just says overall mental health and well-being has dropped a staggering 33% since the pandemic began. Workplace stress and anxiety have long been problems for American workers. Self-reported data suggests that up to 72% of American employees experience daily stress and anxiety. And this is without the pandemic. So this is just in general. So take out the pandemic and 72% of American employees are experiencing daily stress and anxiety. Now, with adding the pandemic, this has exacerbated workplace stress, and 88% of employees are reporting moderate to extreme stress in the early months of the pandemic. And I think now, I read a recent report that it says it's now like around March, April, it's like 8 out of 10 adults are saying that they have extreme stress. And the pandemic stress is significantly higher in young people. And I think we think, oh, they're younger, they're resilient. In everything that I've read, the young people, like in this age group, 18 to 29, are the ones that are really struggling. So if you have a young workforce, you might need to pay more special attention to this group of people. And then the last comment here is just, it says the long-term psychological consequences of collective trauma can last a decade or more. And I think when, from an article I read, I think they did a longitudinal study on the people that were directly impacted by Hurricane Katrina. And so they've been following them for years, and they say what they're seeing is still trauma from something that happened years and years and years ago. So as I said before, your people, your workforce are your greatest assets. And the research shows that companies that are viewing their employees as valuable assets, not cost centers, outperform companies that don't. And I may read that again. Research shows that companies that view employees as valuable assets and not cost centers outperform companies that don't. And so we have to, and I'm including me because I have employees as well, is that we have to really take the time to value our employees, and not just value them for the work that they're doing, but value their mental wellness, their emotional wellness, and even their physical health. Because as you may or may not know, what happens to you mentally can affect you physically as well. So I want to just share now just ways that the pandemic is affecting the mental well-being of your workforce.
Paul, I just wanted to add, recently on LinkedIn, the whole idea of considering your workforce as your greatest asset. Recently, I saw, I think it was somebody from Clifton Larson Allen. It was an associate actually who posted a picture of themselves, and they received a package from their CEO. I mean, obviously it came from the organization with a note. And even though it wasn't money, it was actually a small box of snacks.
Yeah.
And he posted on LinkedIn how much that meant to him. And I think, going back to your point, when employees, when your workforce feels valued, it has a lot to do with their morale overall. And it was probably cost $20 worth of goodies in that box. But it went so far as for him to post a picture of it, holding it, and putting it out in the LinkedIn world for everyone to see. And I thought, wow, what a great testament to what they're doing to value their employees.
Yeah, that's huge, Mia. That's huge. We did something that's so cool. And I think that's like, we have to get creative, right? In terms of making people feel valued and seen. Right. So another thing is like, I do diversity, equity, inclusion work. And so like people want to feel seen and they want to feel like they belong. And especially when you're in an environment where you're like all over the place. Now, not no one, but a lot of people are not in the office. Like you have to get creative and making people feel included and like they belong to the organization. And we did something similar, Mia. We did like a Zoom dinner together, and I sent everyone DoorDash gift cards so they can purchase their own meal, and we all just broke bread together over Zoom. Now I know that may sound, but they really appreciated it because it was something different. I didn't make them all eat from the same place, first of all, but they were able to get their own meal, and we were able to break bread together. And that, to me, I think people value that. So
it's just showing that you appreciate them, I think, is what really is the ultimate goal here.
Exactly. Yeah. All right. So impact area 1, right, is chronic stress. And I talked about that a little bit previously, is that people are stressed, and it's taking a real toll. And like I said before, I think I said it was like 72% of people without the pandemic already experiencing moderate to extreme stress. And so now we're at chronic stress. And what you'll know about chronic stress is that it does affect your physical health. It can cause headaches, stomach aches, heart problems. So just think about just being stressed. Chronic stress is just stress experience on a daily basis. Like there's no getting away from it. There's no like, okay, I can like turn this off. Like it just doesn't turn off. And so it says here, in the year of daily unpredictable malignant stress, this can affect our brain tissue. So what's happening is that the brain tissue is starting to be affected. It's saying what work that's looked at the effect of chronic, malignant, unpredictable stress on the brain has shown loss of brain tissue, and not just randomly anywhere in the brain, key brain areas that are responsible for what you and I need to do each day, think and feel. So just think of like our brain, and this is like really important, right? And how it's just starting to shift and change because of the chronic stress that we're all experiencing. So some symptoms that you may see or, or hear people talk about is just fatigue. We talked about people just feeling at their wits' end, they have no capacity, disorganized thoughts, irritability. And so think about your employees, but even think of yourself at this time, like, have you been irritable lately? And if you're like, why am I acting like this? Like this could be it. I'm not saying that this is it, but it could be. We talked about inability to concentrate, lacking motivation, and increased heart disease. And so this right here could affect your workers, your employees' performance. It could also affect your performance, right? So it's going to impact job performance and productivity. It's going to impact engagement. It may impact teamwork, like the way that people communicate with each other. And so if someone also is having, chronic stress, like I said, it may impact their physical health, which means that they have to take off work. They got to go to the doctor because now it might have increased some physical issue that they might have had before, or they may be developing. So when we say stress, I think we use the term so loosely, oh, I'm stressed, but it has such an incredible impact on us as human beings. And we really, 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 really need to take and pay more attention to it. So that's impact area number 1 is chronic stress.
So just to interject here for a second, I think when you look at our employees, our staff, and you find that some of those high functioning, not just the high functioning, but particularly if you see your high functioning workforce or individuals that are less engaged, not producing their work on time, or even errors in their work, and that's not typically what you see of that individual, I think it's really important to think about, is this chronic stress? Because some people are always in chronic stress, but we've certainly been in chronic stress for a little over a year now.
Absolutely.
And I think these are some of the things that we're seeing. And even as I talk to candidates, some people are getting laid off, and typically when people get laid off or they're restructuring, they usually want to find a job right away. They want to leave one and go to another. I have heard more candidates say, I'm taking a break. I'm taking 2 months off to decompress because it's been nonstop, trying to do, in some cases, more work with less people, in many cases, actually. So I think those are really key things to look for in our workforce is, do you see these things? Particularly in people that typically are not like this. But I think even in people that are maybe not your best producers, even those individuals, I think we have to question what's causing, if their workload is heavier and they're having difficulty, what's causing some of them to be inefficient or unproductive. I guess that would go across the board, but I think those are really important, critical things to look at as a hiring manager.
Yeah, for sure. It affects everything, right? When you're stressed, it literally affects everything. And I think, as I said before, that concentration piece is huge. So just think of like, if you are not able to concentrate, there's only 8 hours in a workday, right? And if you are, it could take 1 to 2 hours away from that workday. Now you're paying them for 8 hours, but you're getting 6 hours of work because of their inability to concentrate. So impact area 2, increase anxiety and depression. And this one is, so chronic stress, I'll just talk a little bit about what happens. So chronic stress is like excessive worry or excessive concern, but then that can turn to anxiety. And anxiety, under the umbrella of anxiety, are just a number of other things. If you've heard of generalized anxiety disorder, if you've heard of panic disorder, if you've heard of PTSD, all that falls under anxiety. And so these are the things that can develop from, stress, sometimes stress can be good, but when it's chronic stress, that's not good. And then chronic stress can lead to anxiety, and anxiety and depression all often hang out together. So, and then that's kind of why I put them together. They kind of, anxiety could exacerbate depression, and depression can exacerbate, anxiety. So they kind of hang out together, not all the time, but a lot of times. But here are some of the symptoms, some of the mental health concerns that you may see under anxiety and depression. And so feelings of fear, anger, sadness, excessive sadness, worry, numbness, or frustration. And I'm going to jump down to fear, where it says it can lead to paranoia. And that's something I'm seeing now too, is that, okay, yes, the world is opening back up, but people, think about it. We've been in a pandemic for a year, and you've kind of been told to, stay home or social distance or don't do this, don't do that. And now you're like, oh, go back to work. It's opening. Like, it's, as humans, sometimes it takes us a while to adjust to change. And so that can also be an impact. The other thing is that it can turn to paranoia. Like, I don't want to go outside. I don't want to go to the grocery store. I don't want to go to work. Right? Because now that fear that might have been small is now turning into, I'm paranoid. I'm paranoid because I don't want to get COVID. I'm paranoid because I just lost my mom, dad, cousin, aunt, uncle, grandparent to COVID. And I don't want that. I have kids, so you have to think about, like, these are real things. It's not like, oh man, what's wrong with Susie? No, this is real. So I just wanted to point that out. Changes in appetite. Energy. Go, you want to say something? Me, I see you.
I was just going to say, I had a candidate recently that, most people don't leave jobs without another job. And when their company said, we're going to open the doors back up, and didn't have a good plan in place, he literally said, I'm not coming back, and he quit. I mean, this is a really good candidate that said, I'm not going back to work because, and apparently his seat was near the elevator, and he said, I just do not want to be, near that many people, and he quit. And I think that's gonna, I believe that will be something that happens, because I don't know that that's necessarily paranoia if you don't put in good measures and systems, and now going, as more people come back into place, again, that goes back to taking care of your human capital, right?
Yeah.
I think that, there are a lot of people that are feeling very, very anxious about going back to the workplace.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot. It's really, as even as we're talking, I'm just thinking through just even like I know we have kids, and I know this is not about kids, but I had a conversation with my son this morning, and at first, like, he didn't do well in the pandemic, and then he started to get like a stride. Like, he was like, wait, I don't have the distraction of my peers. So now I'm good. But now he's going back to school, and he's like, I'm starting to feel like this is too much, because it's like that. It's that constant shift. Like, okay, don't go to school. Now you're going to school. You know what I mean? And so just think about, as humans, how we adapt, and change doesn't really come easily for us. Worrying excessively about the virus and engaging in catastrophic or obsessive thinking. And so that's what I was talking about earlier, just being paranoid or just thinking the worst all the time, not thinking that, sometimes you think, you're like, oh, something may happen, but now you're thinking of like the worst can happen. And people can fall there as well. We talked about concentrating, sleeping. We all need sleep, and we're supposed to get 7-8 hours of sleep, and some people are not sleeping at night. I have a number of clients that if they get 3 hours, they're doing good. So sleep has definitely been affected. Physical reactions such as headaches, body pains, stomach problems, skin rashes. So think about these things as well. Like, if people are experiencing this, they don't know like what it's being caused by, and it could be caused by an increase in anxiety and depression. Health problems, worsening of mental health conditions. So they may have had, maybe for depression, there's something called dysthymia, which is like low grade depression. So they may have had dysthymia, they may have had low grade depression. And so now this pandemic may have increased so that now they're experiencing depression at a higher level. So these are just some things to consider. I was reading a New York Times article that came out actually this week. And they were saying that, while some people may not experience, like they may not have like clinical anxiety or clinical depression, they mentioned something called languishing. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. The article was written on April 19th of 2021, so you may want to go check it out. But they talked about languishing, like people are just feeling like they're in a state of like blah, right? Like I don't want to do anything. I don't have the energy. So that may not be a clinical diagnosis, but what the article was saying is that, when people feel like this, it could eventually lead to the things that we're talking about. So if you're seeing that, your workforce or your staff is just feeling like, I'm here, I'm feeling blah, I'm feeling meh, those are things to even that to watch out for, because that could lead to what we're talking about right now. But check out the New York Times article. I think it's called Languishing. And I could, if I find it, I could send it to Mia.
Hi, this is Jennifer. Can I pop in with maybe a question I'm thinking about? We had a call this morning, an internal call, and there was a reference to us kind of getting back somewhat into the work from office mode. And I will confess to everybody, I kind of had this little panic attack while they were talking about it. And it's still a little vague, and they recognize we don't really have a plan yet, and they're going to communicate a plan to us. And I was sort of sensing like my intellectual side says, I feel I'm, getting vaccinated, and I feel like the risk of the virus is less of a concern to me and more of I think this transition back to being in front of people is just going to be hard. And I can be very, sorry about the dog, I can be pretty extroverted. So it's not like I'm shy around people. I'm just like getting a little bit of a panic attack. And I'm hearing from some of my clients a little sense of, oh, I don't know how this transition is going to go. How do you advise people how to distinguish between a rational versus an irrational fear of getting back in front of people? And how can workforces help their people figure out, okay, what is it you're really afraid of here? Or what's really setting you off?
Yeah, rational and irrational. Before I would be like, oh, that may be an irrational fear, but to me, honestly, there's no irrational fears at this point in time. I think what people, even like that catastrophic thinking, like, oh, I may die. Well, that's actually a reality, right? If you go to work and someone comes in and they're asymptomatic for COVID, and then you get it, that's a real fear. And so I think workforces, they need to implement, like, communicate like the plan that they have in place for going back to work. But I would also say like make sure that you have a plan for both, like that people can work from home, that there's still the work from home option and the in-person option, because some people actually need to be around people to be productive, believe it or not. But I would say to be flexible. And I'm looking at the school systems, like I think I saw or read that Montgomery County is going to offer a virtual option for next year. So they can so your child could go in person or they could be virtual. And I think that's smart. And I think organizations need to have that same flexibility, because there's some people that, for whatever reason, they're terrified, and maybe not for whatever reason, they're terrified for actually a good reason, and they don't want to go back. And I think organizations need to find a way to honor that. You're on mute, me. I think you're trying to say something.
Okay. I think this is, this whole conversation here is about people. And I would say one of the things, whether you've done it or not in your organization yet, is to have those conversations with the people that you manage. Earnest conversations about how are you doing, not just how's the work getting done, but really how are things going, how are you feeling, which is kind of a change in probably in most people's case, but I think that conversation is really important. And then I think to take that to the next level down, that those people that you manage, that how they're doing, and have those people talk to the people that report to them, and that this is a conversation that's had regularly and not just a one time or I think those are the things. It's just, we're trying to figure it out now, but if we're having the conversations constantly, constantly might be too much, but regularly, then I think it would really, then you know your staff well enough to know if it's a bit of a, overreacting or if it's a reality for that person.
Yeah,
I think we kind of have to take all of it as a reality now, don't we, Paula?
yeah, yeah.
We can't assume people are overreacting, right?
No, and that's what I said. Before 2019, I'd be like, oh, that's an irrational fear, but I don't call anything irrational now because the things that people are fearful of are actually happening, right? And so we can't look at it like that. Oh, that's an irrational fear. That actually may happen. But I love what you said, Mia, about like really having conversations and having checkpoints with your people, checking in with them as well. I think, even that, like with the vaccine, like some people want it, some people don't. I had a family member who was like, oh, I'm definitely not getting that. I was like, okay, I didn't say anything. And then this morning he texts, he's like, I just got my second shot. You know what I mean? So people will change over time, and I think the thing that we have to do is honor people where they're at. I think that would be the best advice I can give. Honor people where they're at and don't force them their hand. If you have the option to have people still stay at home and that's where they're comfortable and that's where they'll do their best work, then do it.
Okay, Paula, just want to let you know it's almost 12:40. I know you got a few
Oh my
more.
gosh, okay. All right, so I'm gonna kind of speed through this. I'm enjoying our conversation here. So the other thing is just the impact of collective trauma. And just really quick here is that, you can see it on the screen, on the screen here, is that it was when we all experience something at the same time. And here it just says that it can, it's extraordinary in that it can not only, it brings distress and negative consequences to individuals, but it can also change the entire fabric of a community. So just know that we're all going through a collective trauma. And I would even dare to say, be mindful of that at all times. So be mindful of where you are, because you're in the trauma too. So don't think, oh, I'm a leader, I'm good. Like, think about where you are as well as a leader, like how it's affecting you, and then also how it's affecting your people. Here it says parents with young children at home have been particularly impacted, and that 60% are reporting that their stress has increased. So we know there's a lot of work at home, parents that are home teaching their kids, and their stress has increased astronomically. So think about that. There's a collective trauma happening. And I want to say not only the pandemic, but now we have this uptick in mass murders. Now we have this uptick in the racial and social injustices. People are really experiencing trauma at another level. And then the other collective trauma I think we're all experiencing is loss. So it may not be like a physical, you may have lost a loved one, but you've also lost your freedom, you've lost your routine, you've lost being able to go and see your family members. We've all experienced a loss. And so just really think about that as well.
Just to add a point there, I think that, again, looking beyond ourselves is so important right now, because I think, I'm one of those kind of high functioning people. So I kind of assume that if I'm okay, everybody's okay. But that's actually such an ignorant way to think, because everybody's so different in the way they're dealing with the pandemic right now. And so I think that's just important to think beyond the way I think. And as hiring managers, as leaders in our organization,
right,
is so important.
Yeah. And having like that outward mindset, right? That empathetic, being that empathetic leader, that you have to think about others and what they may be experiencing, even if you're not, like you said, Mia, if you're not experiencing, you know what, all of these things are happening. And I could only imagine that, employee X, Y, or Z is maybe experiencing it at a different level. And for sake of time, I'm just going to just run through the slide here. And substance abuse, and I mentioned it before, but that people are turning to substances. So opioid use, that opioid use was skyrocketing before the pandemic. Now it's even more explosive. So opioid use, is alcohol consumption. Again, look at to your younger employees. Young adults are turning to increase alcohol consumption, but not just them. a lot of people are turning to substance abuse and as a way to self-medicate. They're self-medicating. They want to kind of take their mind off what's happening in the world. And so alcohol, drugs, marijuana, whatever, what have you, people are turning to those things. And what that could cause, it could cause a serious threat to your worker safety and cost you thousands of dollars and thousands of hours in productivity losses, absenteeism, presenteeism, and workers' compensation claims. So I would just share, I have well, I know someone, let me just say it like that, where this is a situation that the person themselves, the employee themselves is not having any substance abuse use, but their spouses. And so because now they're dealing with the increased substance usage in their spouse, it's taking that person away from their work focus. And so you have to think about that as well. There's just so many layers to this, right? So I just wanted to just share that. And then I think this is my last slide. So I just want to just mention ways that you can support the mental well-being of your people, the work and your workforce. And I just want to mention EAP. I'm not sure if the people on the line, if that's a benefit that you offer to your employees. And the EAP is Employee Assistance Program. And those programs usually you get it through your HR, and they have mental health resources. They also have resources if you need childcare, if you need legal attention, or if you need, I mean, it's really comprehensive services. They can, have discounts to gyms, just everything. So it's really comprehensive. So consider EAP if you don't have it already. And then when you offer your health benefits, health insurance, really consider ones that have really good mental health coverage. And what I'll say about this is because as for us at PACE, we'll take your insurance, and then a lot of people will say, oh, I have a deductible. And I'm like, okay. And it's like, so what's your deductible? Oh, it's $3,000. I'll give you an example, $3,000 before they're able to cover the mental health services 100%. Well, if you don't have, my rate, let's say it's $125, right? Let's say that. If you don't have $125 to begin with, then that's not going to even be helpful, right? They can get reimbursed, but if you don't have benefits that already cover mental health, which is very important, then you really need to look at your health insurance, that it covers everything. And making sure your company has a holistic and comprehensive employee wellness program, one that includes stress management, awareness, workshops, and coaching. And if you don't have one, you can identify one. We work with companies and provide comprehensive workplace wellness services. So that's something that, we also do. Encourage breaks, utilizing their leave. Make sure people are taking their leave, and meditation, encouraging meditation. And I would also say to train your senior and mid-level leaders to look for signs and symptoms of mental illness. Now, I'm not saying that they have to treat people, but I'm just saying that they train people to just look for some of the signs and symptoms, so that if they see something is off, that they can check in with someone and then get back to you and say, hey, this person, I don't think that, something is not, it looks off. And I don't know, I'm not a clinician, but I wanted to mention it to you that maybe we can do talk to them further. And then lastly, I would just say demonstrate servant leadership. And what that means is just to prioritize fulfillment of others' needs, attend to employees' emotional suffering, work to empower employees, and emphasize serving the community. Emphasize serving the community. And really what I'm just saying is just to be an empathetic leader, really be a leader that checks in with their people, be a leader that cares, and not just cares about the work, but cares about the person.
So just one quick thing here, the encourage breaks, utilizing leave and meditation. I was talking to the same person actually that I mentioned earlier. And one of the things that she said was that she is working longer hours. And so her staff feels a little obligated to work longer hours, kind of mimicking her efforts. And I think if you have a healthy schedule and can be effective in what you're doing, then your staff will also mimic that too. So obviously, you know, in the accounting finance world, there's, you know, during the month end close process, it's always longer hours to close the books. But I do believe that because people are working longer hours and not having an end time in some ways, their staff are repeating that, and it's causing burnout. And again, these are things that I'm hearing from my, you know, candidates as well. They're working longer hours, and, you know, they're working at home with their kids at the same time. So there's a lot of juggling going on, work, personal life, you know.
Yeah.
So I think, again, going back to, you know, even the servant leadership here, it's setting that right example. Keep a good workforce. We've got to be able to provide these sort of resources for the people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's so key. And there's no, I've never I believe in this anyway, but there's definitely no work-life balance now. You know what I mean? Like it's just not there. And so, you know, we have to figure it out and help our people to figure it out, because it's just kind of all kind of goes together. And those are the things that's causing the increased mental health issues at this time. So I just wanted to leave you with just some resources. I know Mia will probably send out this this presentation to everyone, but just wanted to share some resources that's helpful to me as a clinician, and as a employer, and that hopefully can be helpful to you as well. And there's my contact info if you ever need to get in contact with me. And that's all I have.
Okay. Any questions and answers anybody would like to ask? You can unmute yourself, or you could send it by chat. I know this was really a wealth of information. Thank you, Paula, so much. It was just really great to hear the information.
You're welcome.
Again, this is not something we talk about enough. And so I think it's super important that, you know, it's something we have on the forefront right now.
Thank you for sending the New York Times article. I think I see it. Yeah, thank you. I see it in the chat.
Okay, let's see if there's any questions here. Any questions anybody wants to ask?
No, I mean, this has been great. And I think the one thing that I'm taking from this is that there is not fear that doesn't have any justification right now, because we all live in. And so not only as, you know, it's not a pandemic or anybody's gonna die, anything it has a value right now. And that's important to pass along to the staff.
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you. That's so true, Maria. Yeah, there's no irrational fears anymore because there's so much happening at one time. So yeah.
I'll jump in. Thank you so much for this, Paula and Mia and Doyle, for organizing and inviting me. I lead an international reproductive health organization, and actually just this morning at a staff meeting for our DC and global team, about 40 people, we reflected on the verdict from yesterday, acknowledged that that level of accountability doesn't equal justice in our society, and that it's still, everything's still taking a toll between issues around racial and social justice, the pandemic, and you know, everything else, and just high workloads and feeling understaffed. We reminded people about our EAP. We reminded people that we think about health holistically, and everyone's sick, personal, and annual leave are eligible to be used for mental, social, and emotional health. And that if people don't have enough leave, to reach out to HR, we'll make it work. And I could just see on Zoom just faces like, yeah, there she goes again. You know, she's, you know, it's like, I felt like the teacher in a Peanuts cartoon, like wah, 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 because we've been messaging this, but it doesn't feel like enough. It's necessary, but I don't know how to get to a level that's sufficient. We sent out candy bars for Employee Appreciation Day. I sent personalized New Year's cards to all of our staff. We're doing so many things to try to stay connected to people. And I just, your point earlier about this being collective, community level trauma and a huge experience, like there's only so much we can message, especially electronically.
Right.
I would love to know if you've seen examples of things where these messages can really land, because I feel like we're talking, but it's, you know, hard to know if it's helping enough.
Yeah, I don't know any specific examples, but what I can say, Tracy, is that keep doing what you're doing. You know what I mean? I think sometimes on Zoom, like it's just so much happening at the same time, and you may not be able to tell what's happening to that person in that moment. But the fact that you're doing that is huge. The fact that you're, you know, you're communicating and you're offering the benefits and the services, keep doing that. I mean, we don't know how it's helping, but just know that people are probably using it and not even sharing with you how much it's helping. But don't use Zoom as a barometer, right? that you know, you may or may not be doing enough. I think the fact that you're doing it is huge. And my advice would be just to keep doing what you're doing, and the fact that you have the EAP already in place is wonderful. And I would just encourage making, you know, even you just remind me to say something, is to encourage, you know, you as leaders to use your own EAP. Right? Because often we're like, okay, you guys use it, everyone use it, but then we don't use it. So make sure that like everyone on this call, if you need it, that you're using the EAP services. And if you don't have EAP, to make sure that you're, you know, going on Psychology Today, which is a resource I provided where you can find counselors, or go to your insurance provider and get you know, find a mental health counselor that way if you need it. Some people may need to exercise more. That can also help as well. So it's just, yeah, but awesome job that you're providing that, Tracy.
Thanks. We actually saw a dip in our EAP use in the first 6 months of the pandemic. Obviously, we don't know what people are using it for, but we have utilization data. And so we really like putting it out there. Like, this is a benefit we are providing for, you know, for tips on how to tutor a 6-year-old in math, right? I mean, our EAP is actually being really attentive to parents during the pandemic. I haven't seen the latest utilization data, but I think it's underused, and we probably should have the whole leadership team just make a point of using it so we can message that they are good support. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good. And I think people think, you know, I think I said before, there's still stigma around mental health, right? There's still that piece. And so take that into consideration as well. Like, people like, and I hate to use this word publicly, but people are like, oh, that's only for crazy people, you know, but I think we need to, you know, make sure that we're educating people that, like, you can use it even for preventative reasons. So you don't get to the level of depression or anxiety. You may be at languish, and you may just need, you know, 3 to 6 sessions just to kind of talk through the stress that you're feeling. You know what I mean? And so just really educating people that you don't have to use it because you're clinically depressed, or you're clinically, you know, have anxiety. You can use it as a preventative measure as well.
Okay, Paul, I got a couple questions for you.
Yes.
How do you cater to different employees who have different fears, anxieties, fears? I don't think that you can help every employee the same way.
So how do you cater to different?
Right. Some people struggle with fear. Some people struggle with anxieties. How do you meet the needs of all of those different, you know? I'm hoping I'm asking that correctly for the individual that typed it in.
Yeah. I think I'll try to answer it based on what you're telling me, Mia. I think it's you know, having those conversations and having a relationship with your staff, getting, like, knowing your staff. And I know that, you know, every, like, people at the senior level cannot know everyone, but the people that you have influence over, to make sure that they know their team really well. And so by knowing them, you can know, like, maybe different resources to share with them based on their level of concern, right? So, you know, you may have an older adult that doesn't like the whole work, you know, teaching a child from home may not affect them, whereas you have a younger employee that may be the case. So just knowing your employees and knowing the resources to provide to them, I think is key. So that constant or frequent, however you say it, check-in would be important, and just building that relationship so you know how to help them and what resources to share with them.
So one of the things that I'm getting out of this whole talk, Paula, is that what's so important is the touch points with your workforce. And how important it is to have that on a regular basis. Would you say that's?
I would absolutely 100% agree with that.
Okay.
Relationship is going to be key here.
Okay. All right. Another question. would you mind sharing some of the practices that you have utilized over the last year to support your own mental health and well-being? How are you refilling your bucket? And not that she's asking this, but I'm going to take not the retail therapy kind of thing we're talking about, Paula.
You said not what?
Not the retail therapy. We're talking about real therapy.
Thank you for that question. I love that question because there's a lot of counselors that are burnt out. And that's the other piece. So now you're having to help the people that help people. So think about the doctors, the nurses, the frontline people, and then you have, the people that are clinicians and that are completely burnt out. But for me, I added meditation to the slide because that has been my go-to. I meditate pretty much every day using an app, and they really need to pay me for this, but called the Calm app, CALM. I use that app religiously every day. They actually also have like a business program that businesses could use and can provide the app to their employees. So that has helped me tremendously. And in complete vulnerability, I had to get my own counselor at this time because it was becoming way too much for me to handle. And I had to literally, I had a counselor before, but it didn't work out, but I had to reach back out and find a new one during the pandemic because it was just so much that was happening, and so much that, that we take in as counselors, and so nowhere to put it. So getting my own mental health needs met were really important.
Okay, I think it's about noon. Oh, actually, we got 2 more minutes, but thank you everybody so much for joining this very, very important topic. And thank you, Paula, for the information that you provided. It was so helpful. I will be emailing that out to everyone. If you have any emails or questions you want to send, Jean, did you just raise your hand? I see a little yellow hand.
Oh, I think she's clapping, I think.
Oh, she's clapping. Okay, wrong emoji. But thank you so much. I will send all the Paula's material out to everyone, and we hope you'll join us next week. We'll be talking about cybersecurity and the importance of making sure we have integrity and keeping our data safe. So please share this webinar series with anybody that would benefit from it. And again, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we will see you next Wednesday.
Yay, thank you. Thank you, Mia.